Music education is a compulsory subject in most schools across the UK for students in Key Stages 1, 2 and 3. But in recent times, the subject has been getting less and less popular. Schools have had less uptake in the subject at both GCSE and A-level, resulting in some schools taking the subject completely out, as not enough students are taking it up. But there are many other reasons as well. I will be having a look at the facts and information produced by schools, studies and even politics to find out why music education is in such a state. I have also set out to interview those who are involved in music and music education to hear their take on the situation. My name is Charlie Swadling and this is the decline of music education. For many years now, there's been a concern for the state of music education, and there are many reasons to be considered for this. In an interview in 2011 with Artists House Music, musician David Elliott suggested that one of the reasons of a decline in music education is because music teachers are uncomfortable with the school environment, therefore more music teachers are leaving and retiring, but also there is a problem with funding.
The school setting is extremely unforgiving to teachers. Music teachers. First of all, the funding is not there for music. Music teachers, generally speaking, struggle.
This issue was also brought up in a briefing from the House of Lords, where it was mentioned that government budgeting is low. Also, the introduction of EBAC has been blamed, as the brief says it has a negative impact on the provision and uptake of music education in schools. To try and find out more about the potential reasoning behind the decline in music education, I have set out to interview ex-music technology student Adam Jones to hear about his educational experiences, interests, and what his take on the matter is.
I think it's like an escape, isn't it? I think everyone has songs that it creates like a soundtrack to your life. It's an important thing that I suppose you don't always think about. I know personally for me, I've got like moments throughout my life where if I hear a song, it takes me back to that moment and it evokes different memories. So in that sense, I think it's important just for people's feelings and emotions and things like that. I also play music, so to me it's a way of like escaping and taking myself into a different sort of world and just zoning out and focusing on playing music. I find it's sort of like a bit of a release, so when I'm stressed out I'll sit down and I'll play the guitar and things and just pass my time with it, I suppose for me music education worked in the sense that it led me to a career, so it was important to me. I think at times I was probably a little bit disengaged when I was younger, in the sense that when we were studying things like classical music, it wasn't something that I particularly had an interest in, and because I was focused on, I wanted to become a sound engineer and a music producer, I always felt like it was less relevant. Looking back on it now, I wish I'd taken more time to sort of delve into that further, but from the start of school, I remember when I was in primary school that we were told we had to learn an instrument, and it could be any instrument, but we had to learn something, and it's a good way to get kids to express themselves, to be creative. Not everyone can draw, not everyone can sing, but I think with a bit of perseverance anyone can play an instrument to a certain standard. My main influence, I love Jimi Hendrix. I still remember the very first time that I saw his Woodstock gig, watched it on VHS. My brother showed me it and I was just in complete awe of him. I'd already started playing the guitar at that point, but I did think, what is the point in carrying on? I will never reach this standard. Being from Liverpool, the Beatles do play a big role. You hear them everywhere you go, throughout the street, every shop you go into, it's sort of rammed down your throat. But since then, more modern music, people like the La's. I am very sort of led by people from Liverpool, so people like the La's, the Coral. They've always influenced what I listen to and what I play as well. So when I was writing music when I was younger, it always had like a sort of Liverpool element to it. So I think musically that's where I took my influences from, but in terms of like my inspiration it's definitely Jimi Hendrix. I first got a guitar would be 23 years ago. Like I said, when I was in primary school we had to learn an instrument, so I chose to get the guitar, and I remember getting a really big Spanish guitar, and it was huge compared to the size of me at the time, and I struggled to get my arm over it. And I suppose I didn't really start learning it properly then, but I had it and I would learn the odd little thing, and it wasn't until I learned something that actually sounded like it was meant to that it started to click into place for me and led me to play it more often. I would say that I've not learnt everything by far. I think the good thing with an instrument is you can just go on and on and on. There's never any end point. You can always learn something which challenges you more and more. I went quite a few years once I started teaching and when I was training to teach, not playing so much because I was so busy, and I feel like I lost it. Sort of forgot songs that I learnt and things. So I've started to play a lot more. I've started to use it again as sort of my stress relief, I suppose. And when things are really busy with work, it's quite nice to just sit down and make a bit of time and play on the guitar. The biggest struggle for me when learning was probably patience, because I always had in my head what I wanted it to sound like, but actually making it sound that way. If I couldn't do it instantly, I used to get really frustrated, and I suppose that's what makes a difference in learning an instrument, is that you need to be patient. One of my main sort of teacher influences, I did music technology at A-level. I had a teacher there called John McHugh, and at that point I'd already sort of been in and out of recording studios, mainly observing people record and things, but since I was around 14. And during my A-levels when I was 16, he started giving me a chance for work as well. So whilst I did my studies, he hired me as a sound engineer to work with him. So that balance of education and the actual work experience, I suppose he played a big role into what I went on to do afterwards, and he influenced and got my passion, sort of developed it a lot more, and sort of helped me set my sights on where I wanted to go. I think music education is in decline as part of the arts as a whole. Sadly, I think when there's spending cuts and schools are sort of getting less budgets and the government are cutting what they're putting into educational institutions, quite often it's the arts that get hit first, and I think that's sad. That the focus is on someone being academically smart. Not everyone is that. I wouldn't necessarily say I was. I was never a great performer with exams, but practically, if you give me an instrument or you ask me to write a piece of music or put a camera in my hand, I could show you that I understand, but to then write about it was always a little bit harder. And by getting rid of subjects like that, you miss that opportunity for people to demonstrate that they are intelligent, but they just show it in a different way. If we start cutting subjects like that from an early age, then we're not going to build that up any further, and we're going to lose like a lot of opportunities and a lot of special people. Most schools now, they don't even make music compulsory. I think it's like less than 50% of them have it as compulsory, and the rest it becomes more optional. Some do it as an enrichment, where they do it like one day a year, or something like that. So it's sad that it's getting phased out, because that is something what a lot of people want to do. It shouldn't just be seen as a hobby. It's something that can be educated in, something that is useful, and it takes it like a break out of people's day as well. They're not just doing maths and science all day in English. They get to have a bit of fun with it as well, and explore and learn different skills. I think there still is a lot of opportunities for people to take up music and to go down that route, but they are becoming more and more limited. Some places now just aren't offering it, which 10-15 years ago probably wouldn't really be heard of. Music is always something that schools and colleges are proud of. It's the musical shows they put on, it's the performances, that's how they promote the schools themselves. But then to cut them and remove them away, it's monotonising the whole sort of education system, I feel. I do think it's getting towards a crisis point. If it continues to be cut the way it is now, and less students take it up, I think there is a problem in terms of student numbers. less students are taking the subject, but I feel like that's because they're getting encouraged not to, because they're getting made to feel like it's not important, and they should focus on sort of the more core subjects if they're going to progress in life, which I think is wrong, because if you use that music alongside some of the other core subjects, it builds a more rounded person, and not just someone who is sort of going to go on to be an engineer or a mathematician or a scientist or something like that.
The next person I have set out to talk to is local musician Reese Hall. Reese has been playing the piano since he was in primary school, and he has a little bit to say on the matter.
Music, to me, is a way of capturing a certain mood, emotion or feeling into 2-3 minutes or however long the song is. I mean, for example, you could be talking about, I don't know, the Lord of the Rings theme. I hear that and I get nostalgia thinking about Frodo destroying the ring, or if you were to play, I don't know, any of the Rolling Stones, I might think to Goodfellas or any other movie that had that in it. It sort of locks an era of your life for me, and whenever you hear that, you can sort of almost go back to times that have been.
Who are your musical influences?
Oh, there's all sorts. If we're going for movies, Hans Zimmer, hands down. He does Inception, and he does Pirates of the Caribbean, The Dark Knight, all of that. First instrument I started to play was piano. I don't believe anyone can finish learning an instrument. I'm still learning piano, even though it's self-taught. It took me to actually know what I was doing, probably, let me think, about a year, doing maybe an hour practice a week, so probably not too long. The thing I enjoy the most about the piano is how easy, because after you know what you're doing and you feel comfortable with it, it's sort of it's like a third pair of hands really. You sort of just know what to sort of do. I love it because you could be just twiddling around and suddenly you stumble across a few notes that sound good together, and you just sort of expand upon that, and then bang, you got a new song. The biggest struggle for me while learning was learning how to use the pedals correctly, and timing is probably the biggest struggle. Or if we're going to say what my absolute biggest struggle is, it is by far reading, because I can't read any music at all. Maybe slightly, but it would take me a very long time. My first teacher, she encouraged me to not have to follow because obviously I was learning the grades and everything. I had to learn to read music and everything. She sort of inspired me, and she sort of allowed me to go off and learn different music. Like, I might come in and go, I really want to learn, I don't know, the theme of the Lord of the Rings. And she'll be able to find it, figure it out, and then she'll be able to teach me that. And she started to teach me how to self-teach and play by ear. And Mr. Beveridge encouraged me just to keep playing, really, keep experimenting, keep doing as much as I can with music. I think that people are less interested in doing music as a subject because maybe they believe that, let's say you're trying to start a band, and you have to make sure all your musicians know exactly what they're doing. You need to make sure your lead singer's good. You need to make sure that all your instruments are at least tuned. There are so many things just to think about, and then you have to make sure you've got a good song, and then you have to make sure enough people hear it. Like if we're talking about bands, it's a nightmare to get your band up and running. If you're a DJ, it can be quite difficult to get yourself out there, and I think some people just sort of swayed off because they feel like it might be too difficult to get into that. And on top of that, I think some people would just rather listen to music than make it. I think that's the main thing.
I have now found the views on two different music students, but now I've gone to talk to a music teacher at the Henley College, Nick Blake. Nick's job could be in danger due to not enough students coming on to take the course.
Music means life to me, I suppose. It means it's a journey. It's always ever changing, and everyone, I think, taps into it, whether you skilled at it or not. I think everyone enjoys music. I like the fact that it helps people develop skills that can then be transferable, moved on to different subjects. My musical influences are sort of late 70s, early 80s bands like Gary Newman, Depeche Mode, Ultravox, OMD, and also sort of earlier 70s, T-Rex, David Bowie, Led Zeppelin. I think any government looking at this needs to see how music can run alongside other subjects, how music can be used in different areas, understanding music in a historical context, and looking at it that way, seeing how its involvement in science, especially with technology, is important. So to produce future engineers within the industry. So combining mathematical and maths with music technology would be a good idea. Combining science with music technology would be a good idea. Even to music, sort of as a skills thing, you don't just need musicians, you need people who develop for the music industry. So it's looking at it that way, I think, which will help music to flourish. And also sort of within performance is combining performance with other subjects. So we can't just keep looking at music, drama, art, media. I think what we need to do is we need to put all those combinations together to come up with something that enriches and involves students' lives from school to university. It's being promoted that it's not a viable subject to study. So government pressure with schools are encouraging schools to not encourage music as a subject for further study, because where's the career option? They're not, as I said, they're not looking at it properly. If they looked at it properly, you wouldn't get this issue. So I think it's all down to promotion. And if the schools aren't promoting it, then you won't have any students to feed into further education. So it will only be available for those who are studying music outside of school and then are introduced to groups, charities in their enrichment outside of school.
A head teacher in a secondary school have recently said that music is seen as more of a hobby than a career. What are your thoughts on
Exactly what I've just said about not promoting it properly. There's the problem. Here lies the problem. Throughout my schooling, I was always told that music was a vocation. It's not it's a hobby. It's not something that you should pursue. Well, when the creative arts industry, especially music, generates something along the lines of sort of billions in this country as revenue, how can that be true? Everyone likes to watch X Factor. Everyone likes to watch Strictly with the musicians. You've got to have music with that. Everyone likes to watch their entertainment shows and their dramas. So there's music there. So how can they say it's a hobby? It's not. It's it's as much a business as going out to be a plumber. So there lies your problem.
There has been a lot of negative energy surrounding this subject, from potential job losses to lacking creativity in young people. Because of this, I have attempted to find a positive and hopeful outcome. I have asked each of the people I have spoken to, how can young people be more encouraged to pursue music? Let's see what they have to say.
First off, get involved with outside institutions. For instance, I'm a trustee for Reading Rock Academy. They do wonderful stuff within the Reading area in terms of going into schools and allowing band experiences to happen, putting safe concerts together where young children can perform at a venue, but without the hassle of it being a regular night, and there being sort of strict limits in terms of alcohol and the type of crowds that are coming in. And again, other community areas, Ready Pop again, because I'm Reading based, it's Ready Pop. But here, if there are any sort of, again, any institutions around sort of like Henley and the Oxford area, is to, Oxjam especially, they do quite a lot of good sort of charity work as well. And it's getting involved that way to then fuel, I suppose, encourage school teachers to think about it in a different way.
I think they need to just to go for it and go against, I suppose, to an extent, what they're told. If that's something that someone wants to pursue and something that they really want to do, then they need to do it. There is options outside of school where you can have guitar lessons, drum lessons, whatever you want, but I find them quite expensive. And with school, there was always provided a free music education, and I think that's something that should continue. And it's just trying to enthuse and encourage students to take that on, and not to just go down this more traditional route, and to realise that it's important within society and within education, and hopefully it'll sort of stop the rot.
I think the best way to encourage kids is because, for example, little boys, what they like Spider-Man, they like things like that, or girls, they like I don't know, princesses. Maybe that's just me following tradition or something. But the way you can encourage them is by, let's say, what's your favourite movie? Oh, your favourite movie is Spider-Man. Oh, look, it's a Spider-Man thing. Do you want to learn how to play that on the piano? That's probably I think that's what I would do. I would try and find something that they like and then show them the parallel in that in music. And then see if they're up for it, or if they want to learn to play the piano or guitar or whatever. So I think that's probably how I'd go about that as a solution.